Okay, let's turn it over to Tucker Carlson coming up here. So, let's see.
Looking for photos of the smashed Porsche and SUV.
Hi.
Danny from Mississippi, Jesse, the people who work for you must have a great time. I laughed out loud at the responses your guy got when he asked about Pauly P. If you're hiring, let me know. I'll relocate. You don't have to relocate. You can just work remotely. But I'm not sure we're going to have to pay you. Jim from Connecticut, I retired in March, and I think I'm going to go to Mexico, become a Mexican citizen, and then cross the border into America and get everything for free. Is that a good retirement decision? Absolutely. And maybe Abbott will bus you to Manhattan. Who knows? You could even personally greet me here at the studio. Jesse, this is Jay from Pennsylvania. How much longer are you going to stay in New York City? You should move your show to Nashville. I'm thinking about moving out of New York for tax purposes. So Nashville might sound like a good fit, although Florida sounds a little bit nicer. No offense. Chris, last night Gutfeld accused you of having hair plugs. Is that true? No, but the way things are going, I might actually have to look into getting some. Tucker's up next, and always remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. When a Hungarian financier called George Soros shorted the English pound 30 years ago, back in 1992, the British government fought back. It did everything it could to preserve the value of its national currency. British officials raised interest rates all the way to 15%. The Bank of England then sold $40 billion of foreign currency reserves in a desperate effort to prop up the pound. In the end, of course, it didn't work. The Bank of England collapsed. Total cost to the population of Great Britain? Well, that's hard to measure, but it was at least £3 billion. This at a time when a pound was worth nearly $2.50. It's now at $1.20, which tells you a lot. So the UK got poorer, but not George Soros. His fund made off with $1 billion in profit, $1 billion, for creating nothing, only destroying things. In the years since, Soros has become richer still, billions and billions of dollars richer. George Soros has become so rich that at this point, Western governments rarely fight back when he interferes in their most basic domestic affairs, the most important domestic affairs. In 2015, for example, Soros decided that Europe had to resettle millions of penniless refugees from Africa and the Middle East. Relatively few Europeans wanted this to happen at all, but George Soros wanted it. So he spent more than $500 million pushing NGOs and European governments to accept what turned out to be a massive wave of human migration. So what happened next? What's the second part of the story? Well, there was a humanitarian crisis. That crisis is still going on. Life in Europe got much worse. Have you been to Paris lately? You should visit. Violent crime, particularly rapes, skyrocketed. And yet, European politicians, many of them funded by Soros, refused to acknowledge it. Look away, they said. This isn't happening. You're crazy or a criminal for noticing. So for the past several years, something not so different has been happening in our country. George Soros has decided to destroy the American justice system. And he's doing it with prosecutors. By this point, fully 1 in 5 Americans, that's more than 70 million people, now live in a jurisdiction overseen by a Soros-backed prosecutor. Soros DAs run cities like New York, Chicago, St. Louis, New Orleans, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, our biggest cities. They also run places like Travis County, Texas, and Hinds County, Mississippi, and Loudoun County, Virginia, Chatham County, Georgia. All of them have Soros-backed prosecutors. Soros' influence comes in the form of campaign financing. The money comes from Soros' Open Society foundations and affiliated political action committees and shell companies. A recent analysis by the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund found that in total, more than 75 Soros-backed prosecutors currently hold office in the United States. To get those people in those jobs, Soros has spent more than $40 billion. Often he is the largest donor in the race. In the race in Philadelphia, for example, 90% of now DA Larry Krasner's financing came from George Soros. Again, what happened next? Drive through Center City, Philadelphia sometime, and you'll see. Soros prosecutors refuse to enforce the law against protected groups. That is their signature quality. That's the heart of their ideology. The result of this has been a lot of posturing, but even more murder victims. A lot of people have died. Last year, Philadelphia recorded its highest homicide total in history. Overall, nationally, according to the FBI, homicides in the United States jumped 30% in 2020. That is the largest single-year increase in murders in American history. All because one billionaire decided that laws American citizens voted for and support were racist. Does that sound like democracy to you? Of course it's not democracy. Democracy is a system in which the will of the majority is recognized and often acted upon. The people rule. What we just described is oligarchy. At best, it's grotesque and has killed a lot of people. You're probably aware of this on some level, and it's frustrating to hear. But until a few hours ago, no one had really done anything about it. But then today, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, a man who, unlike George Soros, has actually been elected by American voters, decided to sack a Soros-backed prosecutor in his state who's been relentlessly politicizing the justice system in Tampa. That man's name is Andrew Warren. For 6 years, Warren has refused to enforce laws that George Soros doesn't like. Today, that ended. Watch.
The prosecutor, state attorney for this judicial circuit, Andrew Warren, has put himself publicly above the law. In June of 2021, he signed a letter saying that he would not enforce any prohibitions on sex change operations for minors. And then most recently, after the Dobbs decision was rendered by the U.S. Supreme Court, he signed a letter saying he would not enforce any laws relating to protecting the right to life in the state of Florida. And mind you, we have had prohibition on third trimester abortions for a long time. When you make yourself above the law, you have violated your duty, you have neglected your duty, and you are displaying a lack of competence to be able to perform those duties. And so today we are suspending State Attorney Andrew Warren, effective immediately.
So to be clear, in case you missed civics class, prosecutors don't get to make the laws. Prosecutors enforce the laws. They prosecute people for violating the laws. Legislatures make laws. Your representatives are elected by you to write into law the rules that you support. You get to create the parameters of your own society. That's called democracy. But when a prosecutor decides which laws are valid and which laws are not, that is the most basic subversion of democracy. And Andrew Warren has done that for 6 years. And by the way, the list that Governor DeSantis just read is just partial. Andrew Warren also decided that he would not enforce HB 1. That's a law that increased penalties for rioters. Warren refused to prosecute 67 BLM rioters in the summer of 2020. He said there'd been no breach of the peace in Tampa when there most certainly had been. But he decided to ignore it because he agreed with their politics. More recently, Warren declined to prosecute a gang member accused of shooting into a house with children inside after shooting somebody else. Turns out the gang member was oppressed, and of course also likely a Biden voter, so he got a pass. People who aren't Biden voters have had a much tougher time in Andrew Warren's jurisdiction. Sincere Christians, for example. Andrew Warren considers them criminals. 2 years ago, Warren had a Tampa pastor arrested for the crime of holding a church service. And then he bragged about it. Watch.
A defiant Florida pastor arrested for openly, blatantly violating a ban on large gatherings, continuing to hold Sunday church services.
It's not about a virus. It's about the church being a essential service to the community.
Pastor Rodney Howard Brown of the River Church in Tampa is accused of ignoring local safe-at-home orders, encouraging hundreds of parishioners to show up. Howard Brown insists he was within his rights.
Ignore the garbage news coverage. What you have here is a pastor arrested for holding a church service. This is the criminal Andrew Warren decided to prosecute, not the gang member shooting into a building with kids inside. No, a Christian minister reading the Bible in public. Now, as ABC told you, that pastor insists he's within his rights. But there's no insisting necessary in this case. It is prima facie true. If the First Amendment doesn't protect church services, it doesn't protect anything. Of course, this pastor and all pastors are within their rights to preach. There is no adult debate about that. But But Andrew Warren didn't care. He doesn't like pastors like that, because pastors like that believe in a power higher than George Soros. So he tried to send that man to jail. Then, in one of the slimiest moments ever caught on videotape, Andrew Warren quoted the Christian Gospels to justify this oppression and abuse. Watch this. It's disgusting.
Putting your parishioners at risk in a time of an emergency like this is not only reckless, but it's illegal. But where people are refusing to obey law enforcement in this regard, you risk being arrested and prosecuted. I'd like to note that I think it's unfortunate that the pastor here is hiding behind the First Amendment. One, it's absolutely clear that emergency orders like this are constitutional and valid. Lastly, I'd remind the good pastor of Mark 12:31, which says there's no more important commandment than to love thy neighbor as thyself. Loving your neighbors is protecting them, not jeopardizing their health by exposing them to this deadly virus.
It's just disgusting on every level. How dare you, actually? Here you have a law enforcement official telling constituents not to, quote, hide behind the First Amendment by trying to hold church services. That's a right you're born with that cannot be taken away by some Soros-backed prosecutor. Then that same law enforcement official mocks Christians, citing the Bible as a justification for suspending religious freedom. So this is not law enforcement. This is authoritarianism, posing as it. And Warren's not the only one. Dozens of DAs have been trained to do this in law school, and George Soros is funding their campaigns. This is exactly why the nation of Hungary closed a Soros-funded nonprofit in Budapest a few years ago, because it was poison. And now that poison's here in the United States. When Florida's 15-week ban on abortions was reinstated, to name just one example, Andrew Warren announced he would defy the law passed by voters. His reasoning? He would like his daughter to be able to have abortions. Watch this.
We all want abortion to be safe and legal. And now in many parts of the country, in many circumstances, it will be neither. And I know we've been focused a lot on how and where those lines are drawn. 26 weeks or 24 weeks or 15 weeks, but we are missing the fundamental question. It's not where we draw the line, it's who gets to draw the line. I worry about my daughters, about the freedom that's being taken away from them, about the future that we're leaving them. So I'm horrified, I'm upset, I'm disappointed, I'm scared, I'm worried.
Not enough abortions. His daughters, he's crying about it. Who gets to draw the line? Well, actually, we have an answer to that because it's in the Constitution. Voters get to draw the line. Legislatures elected by voters get to draw the line. Prosecutors do not get to draw the line. If they don't like the line, they can resign and go do something else. Go sell aluminum siding or insurance door to door. But they're not allowed to make the laws. But Andrew Warren is not ashamed about any of this. What he is ashamed about is where the money came from that got him elected, the support that he has received from George Soros. We think so, Warren told a reporter when he was asked if his campaign had received cash from George Soros. Quote, we understand that he gave money to the state Democratic Party, and the state party money went to support different candidates, and I have very little insight into the amount of money he gave, who it went to, etc. Oh. But of course that wasn't true, because Warren knew when he said that he had been endorsed by one of Soros's many PACs. It was a PAC called the Color of Change PAC. Warren also knew that many of the 67 BLM rioters he let escape back in 2020 in Tampa were affiliated with this same PAC. Do you see how this works? Kind of a snake eating its tail. Soros sends money to Andrew Warren, then Andrew Warren refuses to prosecute thugs who are also supported by George Soros. That happened in Tampa, but it's happening all over the country. Ron DeSantis is the man who put an end to it today in the state of Florida. We'll be speaking to him in just a moment. But first, we want to bring you an update from the White House. Now, after the COVID-19 vaccines came out to much fanfare, Tony Fauci told us, and we're quoting, when people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they're not going to get infected. Why are we rereading this to you? Because history is important. This just happened last year, and everyone's forgotten it. We refuse to forget it because the entire business of America stopped and people's lives were destroyed on the basis of these claims. Here's another. CDC Director Rochelle Walensky added that vaccinated people, quote, do not carry the virus and they don't get sick. That's the head of the CDC. And then Joe Biden told us repeatedly, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That was the talking point of the month. All of a sudden, though, the pandemic is starting to look kind of different. The pandemic is starting to look like a pandemic of Joe Biden. He seems to have the most COVID out of 350 million people in this country. Biden is double vaccinated, double boosted, and yet he just tested positive for COVID again. for the 6th straight day. Biden first tested positive on July 21st. We're keeping track. Then he tested negative. Then he had what they're calling a rebound. So what is this about? We'd love to know, but no one can talk to the White House doctor about any of this. Why? We don't know. Probably other reasons. But we are able to hear from Joe Biden, who's in isolation. How's he doing? Well, today during a roundtable discussion with business leaders, Joe Biden announced that he is not actually the president, which you already knew. Instead, Biden said he's the vice president.
I've spoken to the chairwoman about the possibility of my being able to buy one of those Corvettes that are electric vehicles that, when they come out. I'm not going to be able to do it because I can't drive a vehicle while I'm vice president.
Can't drive a vehicle while he's vice president, which he currently is. Maybe he can't drive a vehicle because the state of Delaware has revoked his license in the interest of public safety. But whatever, turns out the guy who got the most votes for president ever, 847 million, or was it billion votes, more votes than anyone ever, more votes than there are people on planet Earth, doesn't realize that he's still the president. But Joe Biden's comments say are great news for at least one person who lives in the Delaware area, and that, of course, would be Corn Pop, the bad dude of Wilmington. As of today, Corn Pop knows Joe Biden's not driving any throwdowns in his Corvette with a top down, 6-foot chain in hand. He can't. He's the vice president. Well, there's breaking news out of the Taiwan Strait tonight. China has just fired missiles at Taiwan in response to Nancy Pelosi's peacemaking visit to the island. Not surprising, but still interesting. We'll have the latest. Plus, we have video from within the White House showing the real Michelle Obama, who is exactly like the Michelle Obama you imagined. It turns out it's all true. She's what she thought she was. We'll be right back.
Whoa. Where's my sound? Okay, this Nancy Pelosi story is just amazing because it's so human, and I think if we take the spiritual lessons from this story to heart, that there's a lot that we could learn here. This is a teachable moment. But I'm not a Nancy Pelosi fan because I am on the right. But let's just imagine that Nancy Pelosi had a long, impressive record of public service. Let's imagine that she was a beautiful person in her private life, a heroic, fantastic, amazing person in her public life, and then she helps kick off war with China accidentally. So Nancy Pelosi only went to Taiwan to try to burnish her foreign policy credentials. She only went to Taiwan to feel like an important person, right? She only went to Taiwan for the feels. She only went to Taiwan because she thought she was doing good, because she does have a long track record of standing up to China. But in the process of doing something that she thought was a good thing and bolstering her own credentials and trying to do something noteworthy and historic and impressive before she retires, she has helped bring about a major crisis that's not in America's interest right now to be dealing with this. She could be setting off World War III. She has definitely set off a dramatic escalation in tensions with China. And when you do that, right, when you put people under pressure, you dramatically increase the chances that they will say F you. And people can say F you in all sorts of ways you're probably not going to like, right? The more pressure you put under people, right, the more their thinking and their freedom of choice narrows. The whole world, as you get under more and more pressure, you start feeling like the whole world is crashing down upon you. And this is the situation that Nancy Pelosi has instigated through just trying to get good feelings, just trying to carry on with a long, proud history of, anti-China activism or pro-democracy activism. And there is such a long history of this kind of stuff. All right. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? That occurred in October of 2016. Why do you think the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Why do you think it occurred in October of 2016? Do you think it was just purely accidental that it came about just as we were heading for midterm elections? No. Right. The reason we had the Cuban Missile Crisis is precisely because we were heading into midterm elections. So President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, all right, that heroic American president, he risked nuclear conflagration. He risked World War. He risked, a massive destruction of the end of life as we know it, all right, for the Democratic Party's political chances in the midterm elections. He wanted to look tough, all right, before the midterm elections, and so he risked World War. And this happens again and again and again. George W. Bush started moving towards invading Iraq in 2003 because he remembered his father got 90% approval ratings after going to war with Iraq in 1991. George W. Bush thought that invading Iraq would be a political winner, and it was in the short term. Right? It won Republican seats in the 2002 midterm election, so completely against historical precedents, by putting Democrats on the defensive with this war on terror. Right? George W. Bush won a few seats for the Republican parties in the midterms rather than losing seats as traditionally happens. And then in 2004, he won re-election, right? And in part because he did this invasion of Iraq, and he looked like he was tough against terror. And so we tend to get into all sorts of trouble because people have different incentives compared to what is good for our nation, what is good for our group, right? What Nancy Pelosi did by visiting Taiwan, she feels like she had every reason to believe that would be good for Nancy Pelosi, but it was really bad for you. It was really bad for me. It was really bad for America, right? This kind of ego feeding is not a good thing. George W. Bush, in large part, invaded Iraq and invaded Afghanistan and launched a war on terror because he thought this was a political winner. He experienced the nation coming together after 9/11. And I got to take this, so hang on.
Is to our government, everybody's talking about this, ought to really point to the pattern that has been established by the Chinese Communist Party over the last several years under Xi Jinping, which is a pattern of increasing aggression toward Taiwan, increasing aggression really toward all of its neighbors in the South China Sea, on the Himalayan frontier, vis-a-vis Hong Kong. So I think what's been unfortunate about this is maybe there should have been a meeting about this before the visit happened to try to integrate really the approach diplomatically and what we're doing informationally and from a defense perspective, so that the visit wasn't just one discrete act that drew a lot of attention and maybe ceded a little bit of the initiative to the Chinese Communist Party.
And I think Neil pointed this out in his really excellent column in Bloomberg this week. And if you viewers haven't read it yet, go track it down. Neil, you pointed out that this president's been in the work for months, and yet only at the 11th hour does the Pentagon start actually planning about the possibilities of what might happen if she goes there.
Yeah, it was a bit mysterious to me that this visit happened at all. After all, I don't wholly buy the idea that the Democratic Speaker of the House of Representatives is not on speaking terms with the President of the United States, who also, I understand, is a Democrat, or anybody in his national security team. Given the situation globally, that is to say, the war raging in Ukraine, it didn't seem like the obvious time to precipitate another round of hot rhetoric in the Cold War between China and the United States. And I have to say that from the Chinese vantage point, Pelosi's visit was a bit of a gift, an opportunity to justify that increasingly aggressive approach that they've taken, the flyovers of their aircraft. We can expect in the near future all kinds of naval action verging, according to some accounts, on a blockade. And even if it's only a kind of trial run for a blockade, it does seem to me that we, or Nancy Pelosi, has given the Chinese an opportunity to ramp it up. So mystery number one is, why did this even happen? The timing didn't seem to me to be great. And of course, the second big mystery is why, and this is partly a question for HR, why would the Biden administration want to increase the tension over Taiwan at a time when we don't have a particularly credible game plan for the eventuality of an actual war? To be clear, I don't think a war is going to happen. I think in many ways, the Chinese playbook's obvious. Lots of shows of strength, but they're not serious about getting into a conflict now. But it seems to me that each time you have a crisis like this, you take a step closer to there actually being a war, whether an accidental one or a deliberate one. And I don't understand why the Biden administration, or I should say Nancy Pelosi, is forcing this issue when the US doesn't have a credible game plan for an actual war. HR, this is something that's puzzled me for a while. If anything, the rhetoric on the US side about Taiwan has become more and more unambiguous in the last couple of years, partly encouraged by Richard Haas's call for an end to strategic ambiguity. And so the Biden administration has actually talked tougher on Taiwan than the Trump administration did. And yet this is happening when we don't have a credible strategy to defend Taiwan compared, say, with the mid-1990s, which was the last time a Speaker of the House of Representatives, Newt Gingrich, went to Taiwan. Why are they doing this? And would you advise a different course if you were still national security advisor?
Okay, so obviously this is a giant, colossal mess. I don't believe the Biden administration wanted Nancy Pelosi to go to Taiwan. And she overrode what the Biden administration wanted, what the U.S. military wanted. On the other hand, this trip was planned for months. So it is a falling down of responsibility on the part of the Biden administration. But it just makes me reflect on this larger issue of how you can have a lifetime of good works, and you can just screw things up by one acting out for your ego, right? She wants to build up her legacy, and JFK was willing to risk nuclear conflagration to bolster the Democratic Party's chances at the midterms. George W. Bush, in large part, invaded Afghanistan and Iraq and launched a war on terror because he thought it would be good for him and the Republican Party politically. And we dropped nuclear bombs on Japan. I have no problem with what we did at the end of World War II. But why did we do that? Because politicians, meaning congressmen and senators, didn't want to hear from the parents of dead Americans asking, why did we spend billions of dollars developing these weapons and then never use them, and now my kids are dead? All right? So you can't escape the political, and you just can't escape like the human ego wanting to show off, right? Wanting to burnish your legacy. I mean, you can have this good, righteous life, and then you go off to Taiwan, and you can just wreck everything. It's such a human moment, right? We may be launched into all these unnecessary tensions with Taiwan because Nancy wants to burnish a legacy.
So funny to hear Republican politicians in Washington call other people snowflakes when they spend almost all of their time complaining about things and then doing nothing. Well, there's nothing we can do. It's bad. We can't do anything. Send us more money, and if we get elected again, then we'll fix it maybe. Promise. Yeah, no, I guess we won't. We'll just invade Ukraine or something. So it's kind of amazing and a little jarring to see a Republican politician actually do something about something. All of us have known about Soros-backed prosecutors for a long time and the effect they're having on the country, like a lot of people dying. But it wasn't until today that anyone actually acted, and that would be Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, who just sacked a Soros-backed prosecutor in Tampa called Andrew Warren. For more than 6 years, Andrew Warren was refusing to enforce laws that he didn't like. Well, as promised, Governor DeSantis joins us right now to discuss why he did this. Governor, thanks so much for coming on. So this is kind of a big move, it seems like. Why did you do it?
Well, Tucker, you documented the destruction that we've seen with these Soros prosecutors around the country, where they basically take it upon themselves to determine which laws should be followed and which laws should not be followed. And I can tell you in Florida's Constitution, that Constitution vests the veto power in the governor, not an individual district attorney or a state attorney where they can pick and choose. And so I asked my staff to review all state attorneys in the state of Florida.
Okay, I don't want to hear from politicians. I find them boring. So let's go to a deep thinker, Millennial Woes. Wonder what he has to say.
Okay, so I'll return to Ainward. What are your thoughts on the devolution of Richard Spencer and his approval of Drag Queen Story Hour just to be a contrarian to the right wing? Well, I think he's just being a contrarian to the right wing. From what I understand, the extent of this is that he liked a tweet by someone else saying what actually is the problem with a child seeing a drag queen, or something equivalent to that. And I think he also liked a tweet from one of his acolytes saying that there's a lot of right-wing outrage about transgenderism, and it's performative. It's like that right-wingers are getting outraged as a fake performance. I mean, this is just wankery and fiddling while Rome burns. It's not of any use to anyone. It's an active distraction. It's dishonest. And if he's doing this so as to curry favour with the mainstream, that is an absolutely futile effort. He will never be accepted by the mainstream, I don't think. I can't think why they would do that, and I can't see them getting away with doing that. I mean, their own viewers would condemn them. Well, so whatever. I mean, I'm trying to think, is it actually possible that it could he be a regular, because he was on CNN once, could that be a regular thing? Could things become so weird that he could actually be accepted by the mainstream? But I don't think so, because they've got no reason to do that. They've just got no reason to do it. So I can't see that. So if he is trying to do that, I don't think it's going to work. So I think he's counter-signaling about the drag queen issue simply to get attention and to annoy people whom he resents, which is the alt-right, the remnants of the alt-right. I mean, I just think it's silly. I think it's all silly. Yeah, there's nothing, I can't really say anything about that. I think it's attention-seeking ultimately. Okay, the final question from Ainward. The back and forth discussions with yourself, Vox Populi and Padva about cultural stagnation have been very interesting. What do you think the solutions to this are, and how would you imagine the future being if this were not the case? Gosh, I've no idea. I'm sorry, that's such a complex matter. There's so much to it. I mean, you've got to think about the internet and how that, what's the word? There's a word for this. Like it turns culture into a kaleidoscope. There's no center. On the one hand, there's no mainstream culture anymore, and there are no subcultures anymore. Well, and then everything is a subculture. But at the same time, everything, all of these subcultures are the mainstream now. So we've lost that tension. Well, that tension that used to exist between the mainstream and the alternatives. That no longer applies. And so what we have is this awful sort of stasis where everything is part of the mainstream. And the thing that epitomizes this for me is the website Fest Ticket, where whatever the show, whatever the concert, you can buy a ticket for it on festticket.com. So nothing is outside that, which means that everything is inside it and under its control, under its purview. It can say which band is going to have tickets sold and which band is going to be banned from getting tickets sold. So there's all a tremendous amount of control there. But then the internet, the other aspect is the internet just demolishing this whole idea of the mainstream and the alternative. But also the music charts, I mean, that's just not a thing as it used to be. Hollywood is just not a thing in the way it used to be. I've talked about that before. So the apparatus for cultural production and distribution that used to be there and result in a sort of hierarchical thing that was constantly evolving, constantly moving, that's gone. And so what you have instead is this endless stasis, which buzzes with meaningless activity, where it's like, okay, it's a new novel pop song out this week, but it's exactly the same as the novel pop song that came out last week and last January and last August. It doesn't matter. And then the thing with different directors, it all seems generic now. That there is, even like, if you look at someone like Ridley Scott, all of his films are just generic. It doesn't feel like a Ridley Scott film anymore. I remember when I watched Hannibal, and at the end of it, I thought, what was that? There was a sense of that nothing had happened. And again, you see this with so many films, so many directors. You leave it just thinking, what just happened? Nothing. There was nothing. So I mean, this is a big problem, and a very complex thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Millennial Woes. I see Doovid's in the chat. I'll send him an invite, and let's see what the hell is going on here with Tucker Carlson.
Barack Obama shooting planes and writers are talking about. The obvious choice should be Michelle Obama. Obviously, polls show Democrats love her. The media loves her more than anything. She went to Princeton on merit. She's a fashion icon. She's married to Barack Obama. She even plants in her own vegetable garden. Therefore, she's totally qualified. And we assumed this was going to happen until we saw a new Showtime series that portrays Michelle Obama as First Lady. And it turns out that Michelle Obama is exactly the person you thought she was. Here she is.
You don't think I want to pop off every time I see another unarmed black kid get shot? You know I want to be out there on those streets marching right along with those kids. But that's not our reality.
Because we're the first family.
Yeah.
But Barack, we're the first black first family. And we've been called in every way possible. For once, let's be the.
All right, so first of all, she's using the N-word, or the actress portraying her is using the N-word. So, like, you're done. You can't hold higher office, even if an actor is using your image to use that word. You're set. You can't be president.
Okay, let's say hello to Dooovid. Dooovid, you got your power back?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh, no. Wow.
I'm supposed to get a few hours.
Wow.
I'll probably be back tonight.
And how's life without power?
I managed. Yeah, I took my stuff in my fridge and freezer. My parents have a freezer in their garage, so I just stuck it in their freezer. My eBay business, I printed my slips out from my parents' house. So it's annoying not having air conditioning and power, but I manage.
Okay, let's go through some more of this book by Ronnie Goodman and talk about conservative oppression. Like normally, I have a really negative reaction to victimology, right? So these days it seems like everyone wants to claim victimhood. Do you have any reaction to this whole area of victimology where so many people really buy into being victims?
Yeah, I'm not sure, how much he's making his case for, how much do conservatives think that we're victims? How much is reality? And, just like watching Tucker, and I was thinking the point I made yesterday about differentiating between politics and culture. And, Ronnie kind of seems like frame games and like the Frankfurt School, and he's focusing on power structures. It's like politics focuses on power structures. You win elections and you get into power, and then you could change things. Like Tucker was talking about George Soros and investing in district attorneys, and then they change things. Versus culture, which focuses on a different level. So if you're a conservative in a blue area, or just culture has changed, and now what used to be the norm, like you were asking questions about if I had a gay neighbor or something like that, where the power structures have shifted, the general culture has shifted, but am I being oppressed as a conservative, or is just my ability to influence other, or the fact that things around me aren't the way I want that has changed? And if he's focused on university and speech and media, or in the political battle where the goalpost or the battle lines have shifted in the political field.
So where have you felt most oppression in your life, as a Jew, as a man, as a white man?
Really very rarely. Like in university, you'll definitely, like, okay, I've been passed by, like I was mentioning the downtown synagogue, where they went a different direction. They basically never listened to anything I said, but they didn't really oppress me. They just went their own direction, put their own people into power, looked past me, never gave me a hookup. Like in university, I made comments, they kind of, maybe people shoot me down. And every time I open my mouth, make me feel like, why'd I even open my mouth? And even, walking around as an Orthodox Jew, a lot of people avoid me, don't want to associate with me. But I'm not sure, like, God forbid I was arrested, but both of those times were more something I did, I had direct conflict with somebody, and even if I was kind of wronged in a certain way, it was largely the result of my own actions. So I'm not sure I've ever been oppressed, and I've always said that. That's why I'm kind of disagreeing with Ronnie, and I say that to blacks and Jews like Charles Moskowitz, is like, you don't get to cry racism or anti-Semitism if you're a Republican. Like I'm a right-wing Jew. I don't complain about anti-Semitism, and that's what Brundlefly said that turned him to the alt-right, where he was like, oh, here's all these black conservatives and they're still complaining about racism. You're a conservative. You don't get to complain about racism. And I don't know if you remember that, Brundle and his radicalization story, but I've generally taken that attitude and agree with you. I don't think I've really ever been oppressed.
And did you mention to me, did you go on Charles Moskowitz today?
I called in, because he's on Zoom and has a call-in number. So we talked about the midterm elections, and I was mentioning to you in the Twitter DM, he's kind of like straight MAGA 2020, promoting Republican candidates, and politics versus culture, where he would have a practical view on the matter. Is if you want to win, you have to go about it through the electoral process, and you have to promote candidates and get them to win. And, so he's all in on Trump MAGA 2022 and, talking about candidates and trying to influence elections and book guests that are active in elections. As, you're probably more focused on culture than politics, and he's more on politics than culture.
So this is an interesting question off the top of my head. I want to put a number on how important Orthodox Judaism is to me on a 1 to 10. So if it was a 10, it means that it just dominates over every other part of my life. So I'd say that Orthodox Judaism for me is something like a 7 on a 1 to 10. How about for you? Is Orthodox Judaism like a 5, a 7, a 9, a 10 out of 10? Where would you rank it as far as importance in your life?
I would probably agree. I remember a prominent, rich Orthodox Jew involved. He was, head of the Federation, and he spoke at the local Young Israel, and he mentioned violating Sabbath to, God forbid, see his dying mother in the hospital, and in a halakhic way. It probably wasn't warranted. It was more sentimental. It wasn't like a difference of sickness, but it was just he wanted to spend more time. And I think the reaction in the synagogue, a lot of people was like, no, that's not the halakha. But I put it pretty high up on my matter. I don't break kosher, although I'm weak on kosher. I go to vegetarian places and, we'll look ingredients. But even Sabbath, little, in my own way, I always celebrate Sabbath. I always say the prayers. I, put on tefillin every day. But in the same time, I will go against Orthodox standards in the way that if you asked a generic Orthodox rabbi, I know that they would all say, no, that's not the law. You can't do it. You're like Hinduism or something like that. You're like, no, I might have a few rabbis say, okay, you're doing something important, and in your case, we're going to allow it. But generally it goes against what almost all Orthodox rabbis you would say, and I do it anyway. So I would agree. I put it like a 7.
Right, because if you're a 9 out of 10, you run by your Rav, everything that possibly questionable in your life. You run it by your Rav. You don't, give independent opinions on YouTube without running it by your Rav. And I do not do that, and I can't see myself doing that. So that's why I don't put it a 9 out of 10. So do you share that sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, it's my fundamental identity. I wear a yarmulke. Even when I do Hindu things, I wear a yarmulke. It's known like I'm an Orthodox Jew who's doing this, even though, it's contradiction to, a majority understanding of Orthodoxy. I've never caved in on my orthodoxy in terms of like, come on, like do this. But there are certain value or things that I've judged that I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do, even though I know that it's not the halacha. It's not
Right.
what,
You'd never get an Orthodox rabbi to sign off, or it'd be challenging, right? So
yeah, but I mean, it's my essential identity,
Mhm.
and that permeates every single decision I make.
Mm-hmm. And so for me, 12-step programs are 10 out of 10 in importance, because without them, I'm not emotionally sober. And as long as I'm not emotionally sober, I can just go off the rails in so many self-destructive and antisocial directions. So for me, my sobriety, my emotional sobriety, I've never done drugs or alcohol, but my emotional sobriety comes first. So to overcome my tendencies towards love addiction, sex addiction, porn addiction, debting, under-earning, all sorts of dysfunctional emotional compulsions that have inhibited my life, I have to make 12-step programs my 10 out of 10. I make my emotional sobriety 10 out of 10. Is there anything that you make a 10 out of 10 in importance?
Maybe universal humanism. Like I was talking with a friend on Facebook that I went to Or Samayach, who had been Orthodox and then went back to pretty secular, and we were joking that I could have been a really good modern Orthodox or Orthodox Jew. I just couldn't bring myself to hate Arabs, and even though I'm not like part of a like my parents aren't even really universal humanist, maybe in a certain extent. Like I went to that special Frankfurt school that was universal humanist, but I'm not officially connected. But I've generally kept with universal humanism, and if there's a direct conflict with Judaism and universal humanism, usually I go with universal humanism, although it's probably not a 10. Like I don't think that I always go with universal humanism. So in that sense, I don't think I have a 10, although it's possible universal humanism or certain intellectual ideals outrank my belief in Judaism. There's definitely no other group identification. Like even as a Hindu, like I like Hindu theology. I self-identify as a Hindu. I might put Hinduism as a 5, but even the group identity, like I have a temple and people I'm loyal to, but not in the same way. Like I've dedicated my life. I would put Judaism maybe as a 9 or 10, but Orthodox Judaism is a 7, because I've declined in my Orthodox Judaism, but not in my commitment to Judaism. Like I think modern Orthodox rabbi, I look in the mirror and I see a Jew. When I interact with people, my essential identity, I see a Jew, even though I feel a little bit alienated from the community. Like that's my essential identity. I'd put it, at least a 9, and I'm not sure I have a 10.
And what would you put your non-Jewish side? So I also have a non-Jewish side. Obviously, I don't have, to the best of my knowledge, any Jewish... Hang on. Let me answer the question, and then we'll go to you. So to the best of my knowledge, I don't have any Jewish ancestors. I converted to Judaism, so genetically, I'm not Jewish. My life experience up until my 20s was not Jewish. I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Almost all my friends in my first 21 years of life were Protestant. So I still quite like my Anglo upbringing. I still have many friends who are Anglo. So I would say that the Anglo side of me is something like a 4 out of 5 in importance out of 10. So I'd put my Orthodox Judaism as a 7. I'd put my 12-step commitment as a 10 out of 10. I'd put my Anglo side maybe a 4 or a 5 out of 10. What importance would you accord to the non-Jewish part of you?
Well, I definitely put extremely high value on honoring my father. Like I basically always do what my father tells me, except in terms of life advice. Like, I haven't taken his life advice, but like, saying if my dad asked me to do something on a personal level, like to, help them out or something, or I always say yes. I always do it. I occasionally get in arguments with my father, but very rarely. I take honoring my father very seriously, but on an identity level, I'm pretty disconnected. Because I'm a tiny bit Cherokee Indian. Maybe a few percent, and the rest, Scottish, Irish. In fact, I went to my father's town in Missouri. They had a little family reunion, and but I don't have much of a identity. And I think my father is pretty confused about his identity like that, and but I put it in the universal humanism. Maybe like the alt right, kind of looking at where I come from, the family history, America, rural America, the changes in society. But I'm disconnected to it. I grew up in the multicultural place among mostly African Americans, and also within Judaism, like honoring my father. Is integral to being a Jew. So, okay, I honor my father because I'm a Jew, and it's a requirement of being a Jew, not necessarily because I'm connected to my non-Jewish identity like that.
Okay, so...
And I don't even know what my non-Jewish identity really even means. Like, I try to look into it. Like, I looked into, like, Scottish Freemasonry, or, what I don't even know what it means. It's very difficult to understand my non-Jewish identity.
Well, but you must have a sense of, like, 50% of your genetics is not Jewish. So you must have a sense sometimes that you're reacting to events, or that you're experiencing the world differently from most of the Jews who come from, from two Jewish parents. Don't you have any sense of being in touch or noticing the non-Jewish genetic strata of yourself?
Definitely. Like, in terms of my identity, I feel that that's a powerful part about my identity, and it's like a biasing factor, but I don't really feel like I'm associated to, just that makes up who I am. And to a large extent, I changed who I am, but it still shapes the way I view the world. But I'm not really part of this greater non-Jewish identity in a way like affiliation, but more it's something that shaped my identity and how I view the world. But I'm not really part of a larger non-Jewish world or connected to my larger non-Jewish family.
So let's talk about American identity. So probably for me, the dividing line was same-sex marriage. Once they made same-sex marriage the rule of the land, that severely diminished my American identity. I just found it abhorrent. And so that was a dividing line for me. So prior to that ruling, I would have put my American identity as probably an 8 out of 10. And now I'd probably put my American identity as being, say, a 6 or a 7 out of 10 in importance. So maybe let's just say 8, move from an 8 to a 7, equal with my Orthodox Jewish identity. On a 1 to 10 scale, how important is your American identity to you?
Probably just like a 5. And as I said, like, I went to public schools that were already majority African American, and my grandfather was a World War II veteran, both of them, even minor war heroes, not really war heroes, but they were honored and received minor honors. And I knew that, but it wasn't a large part of my identity. My parents were lawyers, and then I went to this Frankfurt critical theory private school, and so I never had. I always looked at American pride as a negative thing. I had conservative leanings, and more in Judaism to, like, I want to be a good citizen, good to my community, but and I God forbid I've had trouble with power structures, like as a kid, and through being adult, like things were kind of rigged against me, like like I'd get beat up and then I'd be the one who gets in trouble, or I'd feel like the system's kind of against me. So I never had strong American identity like that, and I've always had the premonition that America's kind of on our last legs, and even like conspiratorial, like America's kind of doing bad things, and I don't want to be too caught up with it. Um, my father, God forbid, we're like talking about our grandfather, and like serving in World War II was a huge part of his identity. Is he a hero? Do I look at my grandfather as a hero, even though he fought the Nazis? And it's tough to know. I'm not even sure. I look at my grandfather as a hero for fighting the Nazis, and it's really tough to understand that. And as I said, I grew up in a different generation where American pride, certainly in the blue area, was not instilled in the schools.
Let's talk about individual fulfillment and our individual identity. So for me, it's something probably like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. That's how important I put, fulfilling those things that are important to me, and that often changes day by day. So personal fulfillment, I would say, is probably an 8 or a 9 out of 10 in importance for me. How about for you?
Yeah, I'd agree. It's very high up there. Like, I try to fulfill my duty to society and consider, like, values that my father taught me that might be within Judaism, but they're things my father and his side of the family, like, a man keeps his word. I think, like an old story of my family going back generations was, great great grandfather said, like, all I'm leaving you is a good name. Like he didn't have, he didn't have any possessions. He left his kid a good name. So, like, in that sense, that's important to me. But I'm more a loner, and I'm more focused on my research and my ideas. And like, I always carry books and read my books, and so I like to think I'm a loyal, good worker. If I give my word, I'll keep it. But I'm more interested in pursuing my pursuits that are mostly intellectual.
And as far as geography, I would say that my Los Angeles / Californian identity is probably a 5 out of 10 in importance to me. How important is your Michigan identity?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably only like a 5. I don't feel attachment to it. Like, I try to be loyal to my connections. My parents, even my dad, if he came from a small town, um, it's where his dad became an engineer, was in, Metro Chicago, and then retired to the town he came from. My dad doesn't plan on doing that. Um, so I probably just kind of stay in Detroit. I'm not looking to move, but not because I have a special attachment, but I just have something to base it off. I have a house, I have my parents, I have people that know me, and it'd be too much of an effort to try doing it someplace else, but not because I have some special attachment.
And thinking about family, I'd say my family is like a 7 out of 10 in importance to me. How about for you?
I put it pretty high up, maybe even like an 8. Especially over the last few years that I started working for my parents, maybe even like a 9. That like, I kind of resigned from a lot of my other connections and decided, okay, I just work for my parents, help my dad build up his business and his estate, and so I maybe even put that up as a 9 for me, although that's changed. For most of my life, it was small. Like, I went to Israel and New York. I was almost willing to detach myself from my family, and maybe it was even just like a 3 or 4. But the last few years, maybe it's increased to like a 9.
And we probably already touched on this, but I'll just say it in different words. For me, the life of the mind is like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. And I think it's similar for you.
Yeah, I live basically with thoughts in my mind. I said, like, I could deal with people and keep my word and keep relationships and try to keep on good terms and be a good worker. But my life is basically, my thoughts in my head. That's what keeps me going day to day. I wake up in the morning, wanting to continue thinking about what I was thinking about. And even like talking with you, like, here I am talking to a person across the country, largely because it's the ideas, and I can't find anyone around me who likes talking about this stuff. So I'm talking to, Church of Entropy and you and Charles and these various people because, I'm seeking companionship on an intellectual level that I can't find locally.
And then for me, live streaming, I think, would probably be like a 7 out of 10 in importance. How about for you?
You're probably only like a 5. Said it's more the intellectual companionship that to find people to talk about ideas that I can't find locally. As you can see on my channel, I only put out a few videos, and it's more to kind of keep it going, to have like a home base. But I'm not attached to putting on the live and having people show up. For me, it's more about the ideas than the community. So no offense, it's not about you. It's more about the ideas that we're mutually interested in. And if we were no longer interested in the same mutual ideas, we would probably drift apart.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And then friends, I'd say for me, friends are probably an 8 out of 10 in importance. How about you?
I hardly have any friends. Probably it's decreased to like a 4. It'd be more important. It's just very difficult to make friends. I've made a few friends. That I'm a pretty loyal person generally. I haven't really sought out making friends. In New York, I had friends, but yeah, for me it's lower, like a 5. Also, I'm kind of a loner. But I like companionship. Like I like, I always have a handful of friends, and I tend to be pretty loyal.
And politics, I want to separate it into 2 categories. As far as its literal importance for my life, it's like a 1 out of 10. But as far as a hobby goes, for me, it's a 7 out of 10. So how about for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a 3, I guess. Like I do it out of duty, and as a hobby, it's more, conversation starter. So, like Church of Entropy, we don't even really talk about politics. So it's kind of like sports. My parents are very political. I talk with my mother. Probably half of what we talk about is politics, but that's because that's kind of what she likes to talk about. If I had to put like sports as like a 1 or 2, politics would be a 3 or 4, and so it's just more utility, because that's like small talk or whatever. That's what you have to do to converse, and like I said, like a duty bound person, that it's kind of like a duty. But I don't know why you put it 7, like a hobby. You consider it fun, or is it more like I'm saying utility?
It's a fun intellectual challenge. It's a productive hobby for me.
I mean, is it like because you haven't found the people to speak about what you want to speak about with, and if you found that you wouldn't talk about politics, or do you say that you would talk about politics?
I love politics. I enjoy following politics. Politics and power intrigue me. How the world works, in politics fascinates me. It has nothing to do with any particular individual. It's
sociology, how the world works, interests me. But then, I'll take like a theoretical, like consciousness, power structures, the human mind, human nature, and politics. So if I could talk about, if I find people that like the more meta level of human nature, than the politics itself for me. But politics is probably the majority thing I talk about. With probably half of my conversation center around politics, and that's kind of like a happy medium in terms of my identity and trying to be a good citizen, or just have an icebreaker for conversation.
Yeah. And so how far did you get into this book by Ronnie Goodman?
Well, when I was interrupting you, I was telling my power just went back on. So I finished the whole first part, and like 170 pages plus the preface. It's broken into 3 parts. It's kind of interesting. I have a different structural analysis. I think he has, maybe like a prototypical Jewish conservative, or maybe like Charles Moskowitz frame games, where he's applying kind of critical theory and focusing too much on politics as opposed to culture, because I think conservatism is more about culture than politics, and politics is more strategy. So, when you're involved in politics, you need strategy and tactics because politics is about winning, as opposed to culture. Culture is not about winning, and then you'd have the greater questions that he might be trying to diminish about your demographic change and the greater group identity by focusing on politics as opposed to culture.
And what other books are you reading these days?
I'm really pounding away on, because I've been writing these essays, and like Jennifer encouraged me, I want to write a book on the multiple truth hypothesis. And so I want to focus on the self and identity. And there's a lot there, especially I was mentioning to you the other day about narrative identity, a more recent theory of the last 50 years. I just finished today the Oxford Handbook of Identity Theories, and another book, complicated like compendiums of psychological theories, and then some other books on the topic. And I want to move into what's called the science of expertise. And it's interesting that I think expertise is considered a subfield of identity. And I was thinking like that as a chess player, where, okay, I'm good at chess because I spend a lot of time on it, and it's a central part of my identity. And then, so what you're good at, there's intelligence like IQ and general intelligence, but expertise is different than intelligence. That if you're more intelligent, you might have a quicker time garnering expertise, but expertise doesn't come from intelligence. It comes from your work and training, and then it becomes a central part of a person's identity. So I've been reading a lot of literature on the topic. I'm still pounding through books on Judaism, science, biology. I read probably an average of a book a day.
And how important is chess to you on a 1 to 10?
It's diminished. Probably like a 5. It's something that I'm good at, and it's an important part of my identity because it gives me self-esteem to be accomplished and good at. And from COVID-19, I could be a chess coach. I could be, at the Detroit Institute of Arts, and I could be given respect because I have accomplishments in the field. But honestly, I don't really like chess. If someone asks me to play, like, I don't really want to play. I play on the internet. I'm actually, my blog, I have a lot of views on, I have the best reception on the chess server for my blog. I'm captain of Israeli chess team that's now got a few co-captains, but over 100, I think 170 members now. But I don't really enjoy the game anymore. I lost enjoyment, and it's more, keeps my mind sharp. And when I have downtime, just to keep my mind focusing and active. And like I was saying, expertise is part of my identity. So it gives me something like, I'm Dooovid, I'm good at chess. And then I have to work at it to keep my status there, and, for my self-esteem and for my, public position. COVID will end and I'll go back to coaching, or I coach online. I have my blog. No one's really reading my blog, and then I put it on the chess server, and all of my articles got a few hits. I even got a few thousand hits on 2 of my articles, and it's in relation to take me seriously because I'm really good at chess, as opposed to just take me seriously because I'm another guy like Ronnie or something that wants to get my ideas out there. But to pivot it to something like, I'm really smart, and I've proven that by my results at chess. But like I said, like, I don't even really like the game anymore.
And how have you kept your phone powered with the power off?
Well, the power just came back on. I have a power box, like that has about 6 hours, so I was able to have a light and enough to charge my battery, like a electric generator that I plug in, and so when the power went out, I had enough power to charge my phone. Really, I got it for my sump pump, but it's been so dry here, even though there was rain, that my sump pump, wasn't full. But I got this electric generator in case my power went out, so my basement wouldn't flood and I'd be able to drain the sump pump. But it was able to, nightlight and to power my phone a few times.
So there's an author, Joseph Epstein, who's got an essay in commentary on grief, and he quotes an academic on practical identity. Practical identity is a description under which you value yourself. It's a description under which you find your life to be worth living and your actions to be worth undertaking. Do you have any thoughts on practical identity?
There's older theories that there's questions of, like John Locke says, the main point of identity is providing continuity to a person, and that it's kind of false, that there really is no essential identity. There is nothing essential that makes the person the same. And it's just kind of like David Hume and the bundle theory. So there's many theories that identity, there's the big five that you talk about in personality traits, that there's these certain enduring characteristics. And then there's other theories that are more practical, that basically people do what works. And if what's working doesn't work anymore, people will do something else. And because it's a theory of mind, it's difficult to test. But generally, most theories hold that like Erickson, that there's a period of identity formation from a teenager going to an adult, where most of those are enduring, and that it might be practical that a person, like role-based identity or a social, what they call psychosocial phenomenon, that it's a feedback mechanism between my own introspection and the reaction from society. So if what I'm doing doesn't work, I'm going to have to adapt what I'm doing, or the role that I need to get into to be successful in society, that I will adapt my identity to the roles that I play, like Judaism or something, or the major things that are the roles that I play in society. So I would be kind of neutral. I think there are enduring characteristics and practicality. It's very difficult to change a person's personality to be practical. And me and you are probably both very stubborn in many ways, where we've made our life worse by not being practical. Like, this is who I am. I'm going to keep on being who I am, even if it doesn't work. Like, I refuse to reinvent myself just because it works.
Okay, yeah, Dooovid, great to talk to you. Do you have any final words for this evening?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I finally got my power back. I'm not sure if you thought the Ronnie book was worthy of going into. So even tomorrow, Sabbath starts late. If you wanted to, you go through it and discuss chapter by chapter, read quotes from that. It was pretty interesting, even though I have some alcohol criticisms with it, but it's a very well written and thought-provoking book.
Okay, Dooovid, I'll talk to you later, man.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, man. Bye-bye. All right, back to Tucker on Michelle Obama.
But there's also the problem that the Michelle Obama portrayed there is completely unhinged. And again, this was produced by Showtime. These are not her enemies. These are her friends. Here's Michelle Obama saying she wants to beat up Trump supporters.
A black man can rise to the highest office in the land, built on the backs of slaves, and it tears them up so much that they elect something like that?
Yo, Mish.
I want to beat the shit out of every single person who voted for him. I want to go so low.
You gotta wonder, did they call the Obamas? I mean, this is like the right-wing caricature of Michelle Obama. Presumably, Showtime, the people who wrote this, know Michelle Obama, and that's what she's really like. Who knows how this got made? Are the Obamas mad about it? They should be. Viewers don't like it. Showtime just announced the First Lady. This show will be canceled after just one season. Woo! Not flattering. Well, we, in just a moment, are going to give you a respite from the insanity. Final exam on tech. Emily?
Okay, we'll take a break from Tucker and... I can't I can't avoid this story. I think it's time that we tackle this. So this is an essay in The Guardian, right? So Steve Saylor saw it, and he makes the point. Here's the author. It's academic Stephen W. Thrasher. He's a PhD. He's the author of A Viral Underclass, The Human Toll When Inequality and Disease Collide. And you'll be shocked to learn that he is also a gay man, and he's a professor at Northwestern University. And he's made this stunning insight, right? Many people, guys, many people, even queer people, have internalized the idea that contracting sexually transmitted infections is bad. I mean, why? Why do we have to be so regressive that we think contracting sexually transmitted diseases is bad? Right? We're now decades after the AIDS pandemic. All right, we got game-changing drugs to restore some peace of mind. Now, monkeypox puts that progress at risk. So the author says, last week I went to my doctor's office for a long-scheduled sexually transmitted infection checkup, and I started to cry a few minutes into my appointment. Like many gay men, I am on a daily drug called pre-exposure prophylaxis, or PrEP, right, which prevents me from becoming infected by HIV, even if I were to have sex without a condom or use injection drugs. At 44 years of old, I am of the generation who knew about AIDS before we even knew about sex. From childhood, I conflated sexuality and fear. PrEP was a game changer in taking that fear away. But last week, HIV was not much on my mind, and almost as soon as the physician's assistant closed the doors, I burst into tears. Man, I'm concerned that this article is going to propagate negative tropes about gay men. I was terrified that some skin bumps could be monkeypox. Because he was so nice, I blabbered on that I would never tell anyone else to feel bad if they contracted any infection. My book was coming out the following week, and it was about viruses. What if I had to cancel my book launch because I had contracted a virus? He kindly but firmly told me not to feel bad about feeling bad. We're all on the edge, he said. Him, me, every gay man we both knew. It's been a lot for all of us. And I realized how angry I was that for the third time in my life, a viral pandemic was dictating my sex life, shaping my professional life, messing with my head, and keeping me from experiencing intimacy. Now, if you were a regular straight person during the pandemic and you complained that pandemic restrictions were dictating your sex life, were shaping your professional life, were messing with your head, and were keeping you from experiencing intimacy, how many publications do you think would have been eager to publish your story about how you were being oppressed? I, of course, am not alone. Right? Viruses have upended people's lives, but their effects have not been felt equally. In 3 cases, LGBTQ plus people were disproportionately affected. No, I think homosexual men were disproportionately affected. Lesbians are not out there getting AIDS. Lesbians were never contracting AIDS in high numbers. Lesbians are not contracting monkeypox in high numbers. If you simply abstain from having unprotected anal sex with other men, you're not likely to get AIDS or monkeypox or a whole host of other horrible diseases. But according to this author, LGBTQ people are disproportionately affected by STDs. Now, no, it's not because they have more reckless behavior, right? Get that negative trope out of your mind. It's because of social stigma is because of homophobia. Homophobia, guys, is giving people monkeypox and AIDS, right? And LGBT people are more likely to be poorer than straight people. Is that really true? And more likely to be subject to the confluence of conditions, incarceration, unemployment, lack of insurance that produces a viral underclass. Second, queer people do not get a good sexual health education nor access to queer-specific health resources. That's our problem. This is why we got so much monkeypox now, because queer people do not get a good sexual health education nor access to queer-specific health resources. And third, gay men have on average more sexual partners than straight people, so they are more open to intimacy. Even when coupled, gay men are more likely to be openly non-monogamous. Wow, you can knock me over with a feather. This is nothing to be ashamed of. Being trans or gay is good, and queer sex is good. But many people, even many queer people, have internalized the idea that contracting sexually transmitted diseases is bad, shameful, and should be hidden. Right? Shame should not be a factor in these discussions. Viruses are not conscious, guys. They simply follow the mechanistic drive to replicate. But those who choose to punish us for contracting violences, right, they are certainly conscious. Now, after the Stonewall riots of 1969, there was this brief period of time when queer men could have a lot of sex with relatively little worry. Then, in the early 1980s, reports trickled in that young gay men were becoming marked by purple lesions and falling ill to an extremely rare form of cancer, AIDS. Now, monkeypox is threatening all the progress that was made toward freeing gay men to have sex without fear. If only we lived in a world where gay men could feel more freedom to have sex with other gay men without fear. Why do we have to heap all the shame on gay men? Right? When you get monkeypox, the answer is not to hide. The answer is not to abstain from participating in gay orgies. The answer is not to be embarrassed about the kind of sex that we have. Right? This is the time to destroy the conditions that create the underclass in the first place. Now, there are other Stephen W. Thrasher, PhD, classics on The Guardian. There is an essay he wrote, "The movie Boyhood is racist, racist, racist." He says, being a queer person myself, when Mason wears nail polish to openly challenge the concepts of masculinity around him, I was totally cheering for him, but I was annoyed in retrospect to find myself so emotionally invested in the success of an average white boy as he headed off towards his manhood by the end of the film. So Steve Sandler says the gay critic is peeved that the movie got his hopes up about the dreamy adolescent boy, only to bring them down with a crash when the kid gets a girlfriend. So sad. All right, what the heck is going on with Taiwan?
Well, Neil, I think they're doing it because of China's actions, the Chinese Communist Party's actions, and how aggressive the PLA has become. Not only vis-a-vis Taiwan, but broadly across the Indo-Pacific region. And I think it's an effort. I think the sequencing is wrong, but an effort to deter conflict by showing support for Taiwan. But I think the sequence of action should be bolster Taiwan's defense, rush the defense capabilities that Taiwan has already purchased. And you've seen, I think, maybe the introduction of this bill in the last 2 days with Senator Menendez and Senator Graham to provide kind of some seed money for even some further strengthening of Taiwan's defense capabilities. But that should go first, right? That should be the priority of just do what you can to strengthen deterrence by denial, and let your actions speak for themselves. Let the Taiwanese actions speak for themselves. Some of the actions that the Taiwanese military and government have to take in terms of increasing maybe terms of enlistment, for example, and so forth. So I think that what the impetus has been Chinese aggression in areas I've mentioned, but obviously the subjugation of Hong Kong and the end of the one country, two systems, and just the party's behavior broadly, I think has brought this on.
Mm-hmm. Let's get John in here.
Yeah, I just want to jump in with a couple of points. As the economist, I think China will do what's in its self-interest. It could choose to ignore this trip. It could choose to do whatever. And it's pretty clear what they're choosing to do. Make kind of a fuss and show off their military prowess about Taiwan to muddy the waters. And I think, it will end up with blockade or something of the sort as opposed to immediate invasion. And they want to sort of make clear what that will look like to us. I think the immediate consequence, I want to bounce off some things I've been reading about this with you guys. The immediate consequence is not the Taiwan Straits. The immediate consequence is Ukraine. we are begging the Chinese to help us and not trade with the Russians, not supply them with drones. And so far, the Chinese have been going along with us. If you want to piss off the Chinese right now, we are in another war. We're in a shooting war. And I think driving the Chinese further into the Russia camp is probably one of the consequences of causing a kerfuffle with them right now. Why are we doing this? I read a very interesting quote from actually one of Nancy Pelosi's staffers. She's going to retire soon. She wants to go out on a big bang with a big foreign policy feather in her cap. It's clear there was some debate within the administration, as there is debate within families about whether she should go. That's why we're doing this. This isn't a considered chess move by the U.S. foreign policy elite queen to Q4. No, this is Nancy Pelosi burnishing her reputation and causing some damage on the way out. As we look forward, I am struck by the amount of talk loudly and carry a small stick. We were not willing to declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine. If China invades Taiwan, we're
okay, here's another heartbreaking story in the New York Times. You're not going to believe this. I couldn't believe it. So this guy, you need to know this, all right? Mr. Iglesias here, he has a PhD in journalism, right? Gabino Iglesias. He's a writer of noir, and he's exploring the Texas underworld. He arrived in Austin with $236 to his name. After being told his name had too many vowels for him to find success, he's on the cusp of noir stardom. Now, here's what's just going to totally rock your world, right? This fine gentleman, right? He has a PhD in journalism, right? A PhD in journalism. So you would think that the opportunities just come flooding his way. He's got a PhD in journalism. I mean, there's just an enormous market out there for people with PhDs in journalism. But the problem is America is so racist. He says, when you're a stocky brown guy with an accent, there's not a lot of people clamoring to give you opportunities, Mr. Iglesias said. I had no idea, because I don't know about you. I'm 56 years of age, and as a white man, I've gone through life, and people everywhere I go are just clamoring to give me opportunities, monetary opportunities, romantic opportunities, intimacy opportunities, monkeypox opportunities. Like, opportunities just rain down on me everywhere I go because, number one, I'm not stocky, I'm slender, and I've got an accent too, but mine is pleasing. But most important, I guess, is because of my white privilege. So I'm just curious. If you're white, press 1 if you've gone through your life with people just clamoring to give you opportunities. Seriously, folks, seriously. I mean, here's this guy complaining that because he's a stocky brown guy with an accent, there's not a lot of people clamoring to give him opportunities. Like, who the heck goes through life with people just clamoring to give you opportunities? Right? Almost nobody goes through life with people clamoring to give them opportunities unless you're a beautiful young woman, and that's only as long as you're young and you're beautiful. All right? Almost nobody goes through life with those around them just showering them with opportunities, but he wants to blame it on a racist America that he's the stocky brown guy. And here's another piece of gratitude from him. Puerto Ricans may be second-class citizens, but that American passport is extremely helpful, he said. Okay, so poor Puerto Ricans, they're second-class citizens. What about the tens of billions of dollars that America has wasted propping up Puerto Rico? All right? America spends tens of billions of dollars propping up Puerto Rico, and what do we get? We get resentment that, oh, somehow they're second-class citizens, and they're not experiencing people clamoring to give them opportunities. I mean, come on, man. Like really, you think that non-stocky, non-brown people go through life and experience a world where people are just clamoring to give them opportunities? Come on, that's nonsense.
Hear it at all. It'll probably get decided the way it should be somewhere along the way up, and that'll be it. And as far as repealing the NFA, obviously I would love for that to happen, but I wouldn't count my chickens that that's going down anytime soon. But maybe not. And secondly, everyone keeps asking me about this, about the Alex Jones lawsuit. I'm not following it at all. Like, I really don't care. Like, I admit that it's a big First Amendment issue or whatever. I can't listen to people argue in an open court of law whether the victims of Sandy Hook were crisis actors or not. And Alex Jones trying to convince people that, like, A, he was kidding, or like, Do I think he should be sued over it? Probably not. I think he has a right to basically say whatever he wants. And just because he said something that hurt people's feelings, I don't think he should be able to be sued over it. That being said, we live in the real world where juries are made up of people. And Alex Jones is a very difficult person to find sympathy for. Unless you're a fan of his to begin with, he's very, very difficult to sympathize with, especially in a place like open court. Now, the only thing I saw today, I guess his lawyers accidentally turned over all of his email and phone records. Holy shit. Like, I would imagine that, A, that's going to get the guy disbarred. I mean, that's a pretty serious thing to turn. A, if you have them and your client doesn't know that you have them, that's a really big deal. Like, you're not allowed to have evidence that your client doesn't know you have, or that you're, like, attorney-client privilege is not something the attorney gets to waive. It's something the client gets to waive. So if he did turn them over, he definitely didn't have permission, let alone if Alex Jones even knew about it.
Yeah, so I was kind of ambivalent. I had, when Alex Jones was banned from all the big tech, I think people have a right to decide who goes into their home or who do they host on their platform. Here's David Cole.
Start uploading more stuff. If it chases away the dumbest among you, good. Maybe it'll chase away some of the deniers.
Chase away the Holocaust deniers.
Hey, come here. No, come here. Closer. I'll tell a little secret, okay? I got this for free, okay? And not because of product placement. You know, no one's going to send me something free just because I put it on camera. This is a Coke with coffee. I don't drink this stuff. I've never bought it, but let me tell you, here's the secret. Okay? I use this grocery delivery service out here. I'm not going to say who they is because I don't want to ruin this nice little scam I got going. It's not really a scam because I'm still playing by the rules. I think if you're playing by the rules, it's not a scam. You order your groceries from this particular store, and you're given the choice. With each item you order, you can either say substitute or don't substitute if the thing is out of stock, because you're choosing online, but when the order gets to the store, they might be out of stock on a few things. So if you get a substitution and you don't want one, you get it for free. You just have to go back online and click refund. Okay, well, I realized that whenever you click no substitutions, that message never gets to the store. In other words, the store will substitute every time they're out of stock, whether you want a substitution or not. And that means everything you get that's a substitute, you can get for free. See, you don't have to pay for it. Now, I order a lot of Starbucks iced coffees. I always have one of those every morning when I wake up. So I order like large cases of Starbucks iced coffees. And of course I always put do not substitute, but that never matters to the store. So I ordered like a dozen Starbucks iced coffees last week, and they substituted these, a dozen Coca-Cola with coffee. And I didn't ask for these, and I don't drink these. I've never bought one, but there they were. They were substituted. And so I just went online and I said, I didn't ask for these, click, free. A dozen of them for free. Every order I get something for free because there's always a substitution that I didn't ask for. Oh, it's great. As I said,
I'm concerned that this is perpetuating negative tropes about our people.
We're talking about U.S. military confrontation with China. Why in the world would anyone think, or would we even have the U.S. Military fighting against the Chinese over Taiwan when we're not willing to do tiny direct actions in Ukraine? We'll sell them weapons, which we can get there through Poland. You can't get weapons. You can't get HIMARS systems into Taiwan over 6,000 miles of ocean after China's invaded.
Well, and this is what I hope happens is a follow-up to this trip, right? So this trip seemed like it was disconnected, as you mentioned, John, from any kind of broader strategy. There's time maybe now to integrate it into the strategy to deter conflict across.
Okay, this is Homer Simpson getting red pill.
I'm actually going to script it and then just do all the voices for the podcast at some point. No. But my spec script for The Simpsons where Homer gets red pilled and then Marge has to tolerate him like finding out about like the alt-right and stuff. He's like, Marge, did you know that the Jews are using cultural Marxism to turn Bart gay?
Homer, stop reading those websites.
Marge, I've got great news. I'm teaching Milhouse how to fuck Lisa.
Homer, stop that.
No, it'll be good for Milhouse, and Lisa's too uppity. I'm worried she's going to accuse somebody of rape when she goes to her smart girl college. So that's the idea for the,
I pitch in, but I can't do any impressions.
Yeah, there's no resolution to the episode.
It's like a rumba for the whole
Smithers?
family.
Have you heard about this new website? It's called Stormfront. I can't do Burns, really.
Oh, Smithers, man.
Yeah.
So ahead of his time.
Mr. Burns? I'm gay. You're fired. Good news, they finally fired that queer. Right, Marge. Remember that queer I've been complaining about for 30 seasons? They finally fired him. Homer, stop calling him that. What? I just learned the word. They use it. They like being called that. Oh my, you're still using it in a derogatory way. They put the Q in the LG thing. It's not my fault. Ayatollah Khomeini.
Ayatollah Comey. Just Comey.
Yeah, just have Homer become the next Ayatollah.
Marge, do you know about these Muslims? They're trying to sneak into the country. Homer, stop reading Gavin McInnes. But Marge, he's so cool. I'm going to become a proud boy. Homer, what is that? Homer, why are you spending so much money on the Anthony Cumia network? Marge, I like these shows. Marge, there's this guy, Louis J. Gomez, that I've been idolizing online. I'm going to start taking adult karate lessons so I can be more like Louis.
Okay, Richard Spencer apparently did an Anything Goes. So, wow, he went over 4 hours. Oh, come on, man. Come on, man. Let's fire.
Demographic millions of people.
Let's fire this up
through
here.
centralized structures.
Oh shit!
Okay.
This is a new thing I've never heard.
There are
This is why I hop on these spaces. It's so
mainstream
fun.
conservatism.
Biden's Irish, isn't he, Richard?
I know, yeah. And look,
Is he really?
Yeah. And
Okay, I think
look
it's
at
just like
this.
Indian. We all have Indian in us, and we all have a little bit of Irish. I am for sure Black and German. And I think I have a little bit of Irish, but I know I have Indian, Black, and German. But yeah, I think everybody has a pinch of Irish. Oh, how's my Irish accent tonight?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
terrible.
keep this in mind. So we had, a Protestant president with George W. Bush. We
Yeah.
had a Protestant with Barack Obama, with maybe some, at least in his heritage, some Islamic, leanings or something. Not being a birther here, but and then we finally had a Catholic president who banned abortion. So I mean, is that a coincidence, or is that actually just the Irish doing their work?
Well, you know who the first Catholic president was? I'm pretty sure it's the first Catholic president.
John
JFK.
Kennedy? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read much about his father?
We tried to rid ourselves of the Catholic menace, but unsuccessfully. They were playing.
They came back. They came back. Yeah. It's you got all those lucky charms
y'all
they
are pushing
sold.
my hot buttons. You're pushing my hot buttons right now.
The hot buttons. Is that so?
Abortion.
Wow.
How do y'all feel about that? Men, go ahead and chime in on our fucking uteruses.
Pro.
Yeah, I'm pro-choice.
Thank you. It should be your choice, right? I'm too old to
Maybe.
even give a fuck. I can't get pregnant if I tried, but I'm just saying, it should be a choice.
I think you should have as many abortions as you want, Seppi.
First of all, no, it's irresponsible to get yourself in that position. I'm not gonna lie, okay? But if you so happen, it should be your choice. That's all I'm saying.
I'm pro-abortion, but I'm not so sure if it should be your choice.
What? Say that again.
I said I'm pro-abortion, but I'm not so sure it should be your choice.
What the fuck does that even mean? I'm confused.
Eugenics.
Okay, guys. Yeah, let's not get guys. Let's.
Yeah, but it's not
Come on,
personal.
guys.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's okay to have an abortion, but it shouldn't be my choice.
Well, not your choice in particular, but yeah, I don't know.
Whose
It might not be.
choice?
Whoa. We shut it down. Shut that down. Let's get back to H.R. McMaster.
The Indo-Pacific region, but with Taiwan in particular, but more broadly to compete more effectively with the Chinese Communist Party and its various forms of aggression, including economic aggression and informational aggression and cyber aggression and all the actions that we've seen the party taking over recent years. And so I think what should happen is there should hopefully be a bipartisan effort to describe really what is at stake in the competition with the Chinese Communist Party broadly, what is at stake in Taiwan, why does Taiwan matter, and what are we going to do alongside allies and partners to ensure the preservation of peace through deterrence by denial vis-a-vis Taiwan. That's the discussion that should happen. Everything's out of sequence, right? The Trump administration doesn't get really high marks a lot of times for coordination of efforts, but whenever there was a big CODEL, a congressional delegation going abroad, I would meet with them in the Situation Room and explain to them what our strategy was, what our policy was relevant to that trip, and ask them to help advance that strategy. And that's what you didn't see. You saw the executive branch almost denying that the trip was going to happen. I mean, and it would have been even better would be to have made that trip a bipartisan trip. Bring some Republican members of Congress with you as well. So anyway, some missed opportunities, but I don't want to be in the camp of saying that the speaker should not have gone. I think once the word got out, that she was going, I think it would have been a much bigger mistake to not have gone.
Since we're in the Situation Zoom rather than the Situation Room, I'm going to do something very risky that I probably wouldn't do in the Situation Room. And it may be unprecedented for me on GoodFellows. I'm going to take the Chinese side of this. And the reason I'm going to do that is that I think the US has shifted its policy in a subtle way from what was an ambiguous policy over 50 years. And the ambiguous policy was to say, we actually accept the one China principle. We accept your claim that Taiwan's part of China, but we also reserve the right to prevent you changing the de facto state of affairs by force. And that's the implication of the 1979 Act, which Nancy Pelosi cited in her Washington Post op-ed. Now, I think ever since Richard Haas said that we should get rid of strategic ambiguity, there's been a tendency amongst members of both parties to take less and less ambiguous positions on Taiwan, to make it sound as if there's an unconditional commitment to the defense of Taiwan. The president himself did this 3 times, only to have his own staff walk it back. Now, once is a gaffe, but 3 times looks like a change of policy. And if I view this from the Chinese vantage point, it's not just that the Chinese have been doing more flyovers. It's also that the US seems to have shifted its position to one of unambiguous commitment to the defense of Taiwan. And therefore, it's impossible for the Chinese not to go through quite a theatrical display of military force in the coming days, because they can't simply acquiesce in what amounts to de facto recognition of Taiwan as an independent state. And I use de facto deliberately. In effect, Nancy Pelosi flew into Taiwan, met with the president of Taiwan and other members of the Taiwanese government exactly as if it were an independent state, in defiance of statements from Beijing. I think we have to recognize that this is a different approach, even from the one taken by the Clinton administration, which came into office in a pretty combative state of mind about China. Remember the butchers of Beijing. But when the crisis of 95, 96 happened, actually, the Clinton administration didn't really want to get into that fight and got extremely nervous in 96 when the Chinese started talking about nuclear options. This seems different. It feels to me as if the administration has gone looking for a fight over Taiwan. Secretary of State Blinken talked about Taiwan in his speech back in June. Secretary of Defense Austin brought up the subject when he was in Singapore in July. I mean, this is, if I view this from a Chinese perspective, part of a pattern of less and less ambiguity and more de facto recognition of Taiwan as an independent entity. Now, HR's going to shoot me down in flames, but I'm ready for it. It's the Situation Zoom, not the room.
Okay, so Neil, first of all, one word makes a difference. You said the one China principle. That's China's phrase, right? It's the one China policy from our perspective. The one China wants us to say the one China principle, which means, hey, they're going to subsume Taiwan inevitably and can do so whenever they want by force if necessary. The one China policy is associated with the shift in policy to the recognition of the PRC, but also with the stipulation that we have these 6 assurances associated with the Taiwan Relations Act, and so it's really that one word makes a big difference. There is no way that the United States Speaker of the House visiting Taiwan is nearly as provocative of China's many provocations vis-a-vis Taiwan over just recent years, even recent months, right? With over 900 and some violations of the air defense identification zone over the past year or so. The economic coercion, the cyber attack that probably just happened a couple days ago in response to the visit. I mean, multiple cyber attacks, the economic coercion, the political subversion, the information operations, the effort to manipulate the elections, which backfired. So I just think that we should not put ourselves in the role of the aggressor here. I think that's quite self-referential, especially if you look at how other countries in the region have been suffering from Chinese aggression as well. I mean, ramming and sinking a Vietnamese vessel, for example, militarizing islands in the South China Sea and laying claim to the whole ocean. Right? The economic coercion against Australia, how Japan has come under Chinese military aggression and is building up its self-defense force in response. So I think we have to see this in context of Chinese aggression. You mentioned the Clinton administration. Hey, Bill Clinton was operating under a delusion, right? That China, if they were welcomed into the international order, the international economic.
Okay, let's get a little Anthony Cumia here.
There's an algorithm thing with Instagram where, depending on what you search for, it'll just give you a bunch of that. So you could search and look for women in bikinis, big tits, whatever it is, and then as you scroll through, that's all you'll see. So there is an upside. There's an algorithm thing with Instagram where, depending on what you search for, it'll just give you a bunch of that. So you could search and look for women in bikinis, big tits, whatever it is, and then as you scroll through, that's all you'll see. So there is an upside.
So I'll try to build up my Instagram.
And they can, they make money. There's some of these girls out there.
Yeah,
they got a lot of followers. They're on all kinds of different social media. They're on OnlyFans is huge. You got to make that commitment though. I think when a girl goes from Instagram or something like that to OnlyFans, it's like jumping from weed to heroin. You got to make that jump. You got to make that commitment that you are going to be showing some shit.
Yeah.
It's prostitution, really.
Yeah, it is. You're a sex worker.
Yeah, you're a sex worker now.
I say if you're like a female comic and you make more money as a sex worker than a comic, then you're a sex worker.
You're a sex worker.
Does comedy as a hobby.
That's when they wanted to take all the porn or nudity off of OnlyFans.
Oh, no nudity?
Yeah, no nudity. It was just going to be.
Why even do it?
Yeah, ridiculous. It was
like going to read poetry on.
Yeah. Every female comic was like, "How am I supposed to buy food?"
You mean I'll have to do gigs now?
A gig? I got to write jokes.
I'll have to come up with some material.
I'd
rather just show my asshole.
Vagina. I can't write jokes.
Kerryn Feehan.
Kerryn's got an OnlyFans, right?
Yeah, they were talking about on Rogan, like Ari Shafir, the great Jew, was saying like they were commending her. And then even Rogan played along with it. He's like, because then you don't have to worry about gigs. You just show your asshole.
Well, then that's not a comic, is it?
Yeah, but that's what they're saying. Like, no, she's a real comic, and but she doesn't do any.
Were they goofing on her?
No, they're all friends with her. They're all
ironic.
No, they're all friends with her. It was Mark Norman and Ari and maybe another dude, and then Rogan. No, they're all saying like, no, she's got it all figured out.
Yeah.
Until her kids see. Mom, is that your asshole? I recognize that asshole anywhere, Mom.
Don't people realize that the internet is truly forever? And
like they know what they were doing, but like I can't imagine what they're thinking when they look back.
Trading money for everything that you're supposed to want.
You think they have regret when they look back?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care what
I should have got
it's like because it's what guy too. They're you damaged goods. They're damaged goods.
Yeah, but you mean the guy porn star?
No, a guy is going to look at one of these girls and, I'm going to take her home to my family and marry her. And it's like, oh, here she is fucking draining 3 cocks in the front end and getting shit shoved up her ass. And some guys go, no, I don't have a problem with it. It's like, no, you do. Shut up. It's like, yeah, I think they know like what they're doing isn't good. I think they have money to eat and a roof over their head.
But the thing is, I think a lot of them start doing it because a lot of them, like if you're really hot and everybody wants to fuck you, might maybe you're thinking like, I should just get paid for this. Like everybody just wants to fuck me anyway.
Right.
So why not just get the money? Then I think when you look back, you're like, shouldn't I?
Guys' mindset, and guys aren't the ones that are able to do this shit. It's only a girl. And I think once they get something like OnlyFans, and they, hey, I just started my OnlyFans, and they start getting some money coming in, and somebody goes, hey, why don't you just show, let me see a tit.
Yeah.
You just see that, and it's like, nah, look, I'm here, I'm talking, and then they offer a big amount of money. They're like, all right, just that, and then ding, more money pours in, and then it's, oh, can I just see a little of your ass? And before you know it, they're just big destroyer dildo in there.
Oh, I've seen every guy, because not only that, you could just share it. Like because I know female comics, and somebody will have a picture because he pays for her.
Yeah, and
either he pays for it.
Yep.
Like you got to tip them to get more whatever pictures.
Right.
So then he has it. Then he sends it to me. He goes, look at Kerryn Feehan's asshole.
You could see it if you just go on like Google search Kerryn Feehan OnlyFans.
Really?
And the pictures will pop up. Why don't you try that? Let's see what's up there.
Do the opposite of what Rogan did. She's a whore.
What a whore! Oh, so they weren't even being ironic. They were
100% supporting her because she works at the stand, and they all work at the stand.
Yeah.
She MCs the.
Hey, you can get whatever you want.
She MCs the Monday show. Whatever they call it. Monday Madness.
Look, see, we got. You gotta walk right up to it. Wait, is that her using a vibrator? Holy shit! Is that her vagina right there?
Anthony, that's a clit sucker.
Oh.
So this is Google search?
Yeah, you just search Google and you put. Oh, look, she's very pleasured right there. Ooh, and then.
Pretty thoughtful.
Yeah, thoughtful. There's a little cheeky tee-hee. That's good right there. Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, they all end up on porn sites. All these fucking things end up on porn sites. So,
look, there she is.
Can you go to videos? See what's on videos. Maybe we'll get some video. This is terrible. I'm actually stealing from her. Uh-oh. Okay. You got volume? Oh, Jesus. The fuck? Dude, she's fucking like... Dude, she's fucking herself. What is this?
Is there volume?
That's it.
Or she doesn't talk?
It's slightly on, yeah.
Very well shaped.
Oh, she doesn't talk. That's the thing, though.
Look, that's like that thing that they use to harden the cement in your teeth when they put a cap in.
They didn't show this on Rogan.
Yeah. Why wasn't this? No, I commend everything. I'm gonna get in so much trouble for this.
Why I
always get in trouble with other comics when you're on the show. I don't know what it is, but it's
just a coincidence. What?
It's readily available.
Wait, is this like a copyright thing?
Look at the asshole.
It says the user number on the bottom of the video, so
we're just exposing who put this on.
This is wrong.
Kerryn. They're on your side. That user ID needs to be fucking brought to justice. We're helping. Oh my God. I sure hope your son's not out there watching this.
He don't care.
Oh my God. He goes, oh, it's Kerryn. I recognize her anywhere.
It's Aunt Kerryn.
It's Kerryn. Oh my God. Wow. That's a pretty decent little snatch he got going for himself there. I gotta say.
Disavow.
Again, 1904809.
Stop that man. Report him.
He's the guilty party here that took this. Jesus. Things in high gear now.
You didn't get that at Costco. Top of the line.
Wow. I'm not really seeing any like, whoa, it's moving. I'm not really hearing any like.
That sounds like a motorboat.
Is there any?
Okay, I think that's going to do it for tonight. Take care.